Excellent. Thank you all. I'm starting the recording, so bear with me if you could real quick, and then I want to make sure I'm sharing my screen. So if you also bear with me there. Okay. Thank you for that introduction, Councilmember Benedict. My name is Brad Waldschmidt, and I'm an engineer that works with NDOT and their neighborhood street traffic calming program. We're here today to talk about Ardee Avenue, and I'll let Carter introduce yourself. Excellent. So yeah, we are on WebEx also. I don't think we have anybody else currently on, but if anybody else has joined, he'll be monitoring the chat so that we can be talking with you all, but also if anybody chats, and then we're also recording it. So apologize for the headset, but that's sort of my microphone. So we want to spend 15 minutes kind of giving an overview on the traffic calming program. There was a first meeting that happened. I want to say it was 2 months ago, maybe 2.5 months ago, to kind of kick this off. It was a little more informative. This touches on it, but doesn't go as into detail. We can bring all that back, though, if you all have more questions. And what we want to talk about is the design that we've developed for Ardee Avenue and sort of what the next steps are. We're prepared to kind of take it to a vote to you all, the property owners along Ardee. We'll describe what that means. We think the design's ready, but we're also willing to listen to feedback if there's any thing we need to go back and revisit in the design. So it's not, we think it's final, but that doesn't mean it has to be final if we get some good questions or some good things we need to revisit. Oh, that's right. During my troubleshooting, I removed my my presenter. So excellent. So we like to say the 3 E's of traffic calming. Education is, this meeting is one example right here. Us kind of sharing with you what traffic calming is as engineers, but also hearing from you on what you all know your street better than we do because you live there. So it's really a great teamwork. But education is very, very important. Enforcement is very important when it comes to traffic calming as well. Managing, enforcing the speed limits. That is something that NDOT and the engineers do not have as much control over, but it is very important. So that's, we want to make sure we don't dismiss that. What NDOT does have more control over is that third one, the engineering, doing something to the streets where cars really have to start slowing down or driving slower than what they may be driving right now. So the traffic calming program focuses on residential streets. This program does not address Gallatin Pike or Brick Church or Dickerson. It really focuses on some of the more neighborhood streets where people's front yards are and where people are living. And again, the goal is to look at some physical solutions that can be done to the streets to reduce speeds and really encourage just those lower speeds. Also, Nashville never does not select neighborhoods; they select street at a time. And so Ardee Avenue, that's why we're here. Ardee Avenue is one of the streets that has been chosen to really focus on reducing speeds, increasing safety, and it's really part of the whole safety, trying to make all roads safer for all users. We do like to make sure people are aware of Hub Nashville. Lots of citizens we talk to are. This is something outside the traffic calming program. We call this our promotional slide here. We just want to make sure if there's anything else besides traffic calming, you all ever have a concern or a comment or a question, Hub Nashville or calling 311 is a great resource for anything else like a clogged drain inlet, or there's a tree branch knocked down the road, or there's a green light that's out on the signal. This is a great resource. If it's traffic calming, we are your people. We're here for you. But anything else, we just like to make sure neighborhoods and community members know about that. So Councilmember Benedict alluded to it. There's over 420 streets that have applied, just like you did a while back, for traffic calming, expressing a desire to do something about slowing down cars on neighborhood streets. Ardee Avenue was one of 24. That was part of the most recent selection back in July. So that's why we're here. All 420 streets go through a big prioritization. One of the things we look at is speed. How fast are cars going? We actually measure speeds for 24 hours on each of those 420 plus streets. And you see, the faster these cars are going above the posted speed limit, the higher that's going to score. We also look at how many crashes are happening along each of these streets. And then also things like active transportation and neighborhood destinations. If you have a street that does not have a sidewalk, that means people are probably walking in the street. That's going to score higher also. And then if you have things like parks and schools that are promoting people to want to walk, that's going to score higher. So all that kind of gets fed on. And Ardee Avenue was one of the top 24 of all those 420 streets when you kind of look at the accumulation of all of that. And so we're talking about Ardee Avenue from Gallatin Pike at the traffic signal through the all-way stop at Kennedy and all the way to McGavick Pike. So pretty much the whole section of Ardee Avenue, which as you can see, as you know, has a posted speed of 25. I can't remember what the speed collection was, but it was high enough to get you all scored. But I couldn't tell you how much it was, but obviously we know there's a speeding issue out there. So again, Ardee Avenue, just we always include this slide for where it's located. Again, if you live on there, you know it just as well as we do here. But yeah, that's the focus street we're looking at. So one thing to note, Ardee Avenue does have a section that has a WeGo route, the section between Kennedy and McGavick. That doesn't have much impact on our traffic calming design. We just like to let you all know we're aware of it. We coordinate with WeGo on these traffic calming streets. I'd say less than 20% of our streets have a WeGo route on them. Not many do, but this is one that has it. So we've shared that with WeGo so they're aware of what we're proposing. I believe the route's only between Kennedy and McGavick, but still, since we're doing something traffic calming, we work with WeGo on that to make sure that we're communicating both agencies on that. So I would like to kind of demonstrate our proposed traffic calming measures. Then I'm going to switch over to a final design that's a zoomed in design. It'll be very detailed. We can go page by page and kind of show what we're proposing. So in general, these speed cushions are what we are proposing along Ardee Avenue. This is one of Nashville and NDOT's more common, more popular traffic calming devices. They are black rubberized products. The highest point is about 3 inches above the pavement. There's a ramp up and a ramp down. It's about 7 feet long. So they are not the short ones like in grocery store parking lots. That's NDOT didn't put those out. That we want to keep people going around 15 miles an hour, maybe 15 to 20 miles an hour, depending on comfort level for each driver. That is what's being proposed. An alternative we do consider sometimes is speed tables. Basically, just imagine this picture a little longer, but stretching the entire road without any gaps in between. We call that a speed table. The reason we're doing these speed cushions are twofold. One is it is a little cheaper. I'll just be honest with you, there's less product, so it is a little cheaper. The real benefit though is in the safety and emergency vehicle response times. All the cars will be driving slower when they go over speed tables, the bigger ones. That includes emergency vehicles. Cars do not have a wide enough wheelbase to straddle the speed cushions. At least one wheel path will go over these, if not two. Emergency vehicles have a wider wheelbase. That's fire trucks, that's ambulances. So their front wheels are able to completely straddle one of these speed cushions and not actually go over them. The back wheels might get impacted a little bit, but it's really, they're going to hit kind of these like the ramp up sides right here. And so it is going to impact them, but it will be less impact than if we were doing the speed tables. And so that is the reason why NDOT really supports the speed cushions. We looked at a few options. We feel like this one may be the more effective one for Ardee Avenue to slow cars down. Again, comfort is relative, but my opinion is usually cars are comfortable going between 15 to 20 miles an hour over this. Some people may want to go slower. Some people may be able to take them at 25 at the posted speed. It's just, I think it would be a jolt personally, but that is kind of what you could expect with the speed cushions. So like I said, I want to flip over now to the final design. And I want to kind of just walk through this final design, and I'd really like that to go away. There we go. All right, so this is we'll see if this works. I may want to zoom in as I'm seeing this is kind of far out, but this is a schematic of Ardee Avenue. Again, Gallatin Pike, it's kind of in the top left corner. It's going through Kennedy Avenue all the way to McGavick Pike. And I know it's kind of hard to see on the far back, but there are essentially 8 different speed cushion locations. So that picture that we showed, there'd be 2 of them, 2 cushions. It would look more like this photo on the right instead of the one on the left. Ardee's not quite as wide as the street on the left. Ardee's more as the width as the street on the right. So there'd be 2 cushions, and we're proposing to do that at 8 different locations along Ardee. 4 locations between Gallatin Pike and Kennedy Avenue, and then 4 more locations between Kennedy Avenue and McGavick Pike. Now we chose that number because there is a kind of a recommended spacing for these things. You don't want the speed cushions to be too close together, or it's going to feel like a parking lot, a mall parking lot where you're going over them like almost seems all the time. but you also don't want to space them too far apart, or the speeders that want to speed are going to have more distance to pick up speed between them. So typically these cushions are spaced between 400 to 500 feet apart. So that's, anything less than, it gets a little repetitive. Anything greater, cars can maybe pick up speed if they wanted to. So that represents kind of how we've come to the number, is that spacing and design. What I want to do is just walk through it with the group. We're going to start in the upper left corner on Gallatin Pike and just walk our way through. And I am certainly welcome to pause or make sure if people ask, tell me what their street number is, we can get to that. So here we are at Gallatin Pike at Ardee Avenue. There would be speed cushions in front of 1131 and 1132, right across the street from each other, and also speed cushions in front of 1148 and 1149. So that's the first two locations. Again, 1131, 1132, and then 1148, 1149. I know it's difficult to see. One thing we also put is these warning signs. The yellow diamond warning signs will get installed at most of them that say speed cushions ahead. So if people are not accustomed to driving over them, there's signs that are usually right next to them or right in front of them to let people know there's speed cushions, so that they also have an awareness and don't get completely caught off guard. So that's the first two locations. I'm going to go to the next page now. So now these are the two getting closer to Kennedy Avenue, working our way southeast. The next speed cushion location is in front of 1208, 1210, and 1209. And then the next speed cushion location is right in front of 1230, 1237 addresses. So those are the four locations that we've proposed between Gallatin Pike and Kennedy Avenue. You can see the Kennedy Avenue all-way stop is right here on the far right. So now let's just want to walk through, make sure, kind of talk through the design, going further southeast on Kennedy. So the next location is just before you get to Murray Place. These cushions, they're sort of in between 1326, 1328, and then 1327, 1329 on the other side of the street. So right there, just near Murray Place. And as you go around that curve, the next spot is right in front of 1408 and 1413. So there's two more remaining as we get closer to McGavick Pike. Again, you see an example of one of those warning signs, the yellow warning signs. This cushion location here is near 1427, 1429, and then 1428 on the other side of the street. And then the last cushion is in front of 1442 and 1445. And again, all those speed cushion locations, generally we're trying to find that 400-foot to 500-foot spacing. We also work to avoid placing speed cushions right in front of people's driveways. I mean, there's something to slow cars down. It's possible, but it's not maybe the most fun to be turning right over them and going at an angle. So we try to make sure we're placing them at least 25 or 30 feet away from any driveway. So if any of those street numbers I just said out loud, if you live at one of those, that means it's probably going to be kind of in front of your front yard, but it would not be right in front of your driveway. We work very hard to not do that. It would be a certain number of feet away from that driveway. So you maybe wouldn't be turning right or left and going at it over an angle. That would be safe. It just maybe wouldn't be as comfortable as hitting it straight on. So that is sort of a review of the design. I'm just going to keep going and talk about what the next steps would be. Certainly willing to talk about this. I'm on a roll. So let me talk about, hey, I've got a question. Yes. Yeah.
There was some discussion about some signing entrance, like speed bumps with effect here, like
yes.
Some of those like flashing lights, that sort of thing.
I'm representing NDOT when I say this. We generally are not doing that as much. I personally live in a Nashville neighborhood that has those traffic calming neighborhood. Welcome, you're in a traffic calming program. It's a nice sign. The reality is it's not enforceable. It doesn't really do much. And I think as engineers and NDOT, what we're trying to do is really put signs up that are meaningful. And so I think for that reason, NDOT is starting to shift away from putting up this is a neighborhood traffic calming neighborhood street, and instead focus more on the actual cushions and then the warning signs that are actually going to be as you approach. Sometimes there'll be one at each sign, or excuse me, sometimes there'll be a sign at each location, Or sometimes, for instance, between Murray Place and McGavick Pike, there'll just be one sign and going on each direction, not at every one. So I'm not going to do the entry signs, going to do the signs at the cushions instead. Yeah, so and this kind of just shows an example of what it would look like if you were kind of looking at it, 20 feet up in the air, 50 feet up in the air, looking down on it. Just again, you've seen the photos, but this is sort of a schematic, just so the contractor knows how to install these. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go back and I'm going to go back to the presentation and just touch on what the next steps would be. And if y'all could bear with me, please, I just want to make sure that for the recording that I am not messing anything up here. Appreciate that. Appreciate your patience. So again, you all filled an application. We talked about how you got selected, Ardee Avenue. We had the first meeting. I feel like it was 2.5 months ago, 3 months ago. I can't remember. We've finalized the design. We just walked through that together. We're here at the second meeting. So we want to answer questions. We want to hear from you all. But if everybody's good with the final design, the next steps are a vote. The traffic calming program, in my opinion, is sort of unique in that NDOT, we prepare a design in response to the application that got chosen, which the neighborhood submitted, but then ultimately it is the property owners on Ardee Avenue that decide whether this gets installed or not. And I'm pointing to that, pretend the design's up there. But so it's going to be the property owners along Ardee that decide whether or not this happens. That next step will be the online ballot. And this online ballot is a relatively newer process for NDOT. And what's going to happen is, just like the mailers that I really hope you all got if you have property along Ardee Avenue, the same type of mailer will go out with a voting link or a QR code, and also be a unique ID code. Each property owner gets a unique code, sort of as the six-digit authentication, whatever. And we're going to send it to a vote and keep that voting window open for 6 weeks. And that mailer is going to include the link to where that design I just walked through is available on the NDOT website. It's not there today, but it will be when the mailers go out. So anybody who isn't here or wants to look at it again can go to that website and kind of review so that you know what you're voting on. Each property owner along Ardee, all the way from Gallatin, all the way through to McGavick, can vote, yes, I want traffic calming based on this design, or no, I do not want this traffic calming on the design. And after 6 weeks, we at NDOT will see, of all the people that voted, not the total number of property owners, but of all the people that voted who actually cared to vote, if 2/3 or more of those answers are yes, you're going to get the traffic calming design. It will get installed. NDOT will order the materials, have the contractor install them. If it's not, if there's not enough people that vote, you will not get the design, but NDOT will go back with the council member in the neighborhood on maybe some other measures that wouldn't involve something installed in the street. So maybe something a little more that wouldn't be as effective, but could still help if there's a speeding problem. So that's the next steps after this meeting. Again, if we leave this meeting and we're good with the design to move forward, that's the voting process. That is the final slide. I would love to open it up to questions or comments on the design or about the voting process. We want to make sure everyone kind of understands. Yes.
Sorry, I have two things. I'm glad it's breaking up.
Let's go too.
Jones quite a bit, and there's two of those. I believe it's the exact same thing on Jones. They are already kind of like beat up a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Just what the long term. Not that one on Jones or anything. Already, like the plastic is coming off on one of the sides of one of them. It's sort of starting to look beat up, and I don't think that they've been there for that long.
Okay, so let me respond to that, then I will get to your second question. So I think I know the location on Jones you're talking about, and I'm not sure if it's these speed cushions. I think it might be the bigger speed tables that extend across the entire road. Please let me know if I'm wrong. There may be multiple Jones, but either way, that leads into a example. I had a question on Saturday on another meeting of who maintains these? Who's gonna, when they start getting ripped apart? I hate to hear Jones might be already, but that's NDOT. That is absolutely NDOT. So we're the traffic calming people to get this deployed. But if there is a maintenance issue, I really hope someone on Jones goes to Hub Nashville, because that would be NDOT's responsibility if it's to either repair it or to replace it. So I hope that the Jones people, Jones Avenue, where that's getting torn up, I would advise them to go 3-1 on our Hub Nashville so that NDOT can take a look at it, because that doesn't sound like the way it should be. That's why we try to make sure everyone knows about this resource. So as far as how long these speed cushions would last, I don't know the years. The vendor obviously warranties it for a certain amount of time, but as citizens, as property owners on Ardee, that's an NDOT piece of infrastructure that your taxpayer dollars would have paid for. So it shouldn't get ripped up in a year, but regardless, that Hub Nashville, NDOT's going to maintain those and repair them when needed. So, yeah.
Second thing, I mean, I think that I like the idea of something. Driving down I traverse down Ardee all the way,
Mhm.
and like, I feel like driving down 8 of them, if I go from my house, which is on, like, I would traverse all 8 for me to go down the whole street.
Right.
And it feels like a lot to like ask a motorist to just go over 8 of those things just to get to what's on the other side of the street. It doesn't feel like it's that long of a street. I mean, other people could absolutely think that that's wrong and whatever.
Right.
But that, to me, it feels like that is.
Yeah. And that's totally valid. Like your opinion is totally valid. So I can't say you're right or wrong. I mean, what I can repeat though, we choose the spacing based on that 400 to 500 foot distance. Anything less would be or anything smaller would be, in my opinion, kind of irritating and just too much. But anything greater, unfortunately, there still might be people that want to speed on the street, which is very frustrating. But that longer distance, which would mean less cushions, it could mean people might pick up more speed in between. So your opinion is totally valid, and honestly, that's why we put this thing to a vote. Is some people may see this design of the 8, and I'm gonna go ahead and just go back, just so I can. Right. So let's see here.
We have a street plan, and Ardee Avenue is a neighborhood street, not designed.
But to your point, some people don't want speeding on their neighborhood street, and they may not want cushions every 500 feet. But some people may be tired of the speeding and they want to vote. And that's one of the reasons why this program, in my opinion, is kind of cool. That everybody can vote for it. If you have property along Ardee Avenue, and that's we let the votes kind of dictate what happens. But yeah. Yes.
Has there been consideration given to allowing people on not just the street where they're traffic calming, surrounding streets, neighborhood, like the neighborhoods that were pretty alive? Desperately want to see it, but I'm going to get my input in the meeting now. Since it requires a vote, instead of just it not being like, well, this is what we recommend, so this is what's going to be done, to kind of say, yes, I live in the neighborhood, this is on it, just because
Gotcha. So I'm just trying to make sure I understand. It sounds like you support this, but you won't have a vote because you don't live on Ardee. So one of the things is people that are passionate either way, for or against, you can still use the phrase rock the vote. It's corny, but like you can still make sure people know about the vote when they get the mailers. And so that's a positive thing that we like to make sure people know, that they don't have a vote. There's still things you can do to influence or support people to vote. Is at NDOT, we don't try to sway a vote either way. We respond to an application. We put together a design that we feel will slow the vehicles down, and then we kind of toss it back to the street and the neighborhood to say, so. That, okay.
I would add that Clinton environment is one that. Yeah, collect signatures, and that changed the ballot process. We had a lot of people who had said yes. We went to their doors, with QR code and said, fill out the survey so that we get yeses. 93% yeses.
So to follow up on what Councilmember Benedict is saying, before July 1st, the process was you would need a petition with hard copy signatures. I'm going to make up, I like to use this analogy, 100. Let's say there's 100 property owners on Ardee. I don't know if there are. Let's say there's 100. Under the old way, you'd have to get 70 signatures saying, yes, we support this. Door to door, hard, just, and NDOT just says, all right, good luck. So now, as of July 1st, based on neighborhood feedback, council member feedback, it's now been changed to NDOT sends the mailer. There's a QR code. It's an online ballot portal that NDOT's maintaining, and it's now 2/3 of the people that vote. So again, if you have 100 properties, but only 10 people vote, but 7 of those 10 vote yes, that's more than 2/3 of the people that voted. So those are some of the things that NDOT's tried to do just so that the people that don't care or don't respond don't negatively hurt the cause. So
Who do you know? Street is in favor of it and make the debate.
I was just gonna say, I don't know anybody that's on RD personally, but lunch. Either way.
If people want a list of the property owners that they're gonna do mailing, give them a copy of that.
It's all public record. So I was going to say, so we pull from Metro Nashville parcel property to send these mailers and send the ballots. NDOT, we do not send that list, even though it's all public record. We just try to but if the council member's willing to, that's totally her right. And yeah.
There's a mailing list builder. So it's all public info. When they pull it, I'll just get the spreadsheet posted on the Facebook.
Or rental houses.
Yeah, so just to say that for the recording, yes, if there's a renter, it is going to the property owners. And so that means if there's a renter, the property is owned by somebody in Kentucky, these meeting mailers and the ballot will go to that owner in Kentucky. They have the vote. And that's an example of, in the petition process, that kind of would hurt the cause if all these out of town landlords, now if they don't vote, it doesn't help or hurt. It's kind of just thrown out, sort of like, in my opinion, the normal elections. If the people who voted, what was the result? So that's kind of what we're trying to do with the new model. Right. So with the petition, that's what had to happen. Now it's, again, if the landlord doesn't respond, it's not a good or bad. It's just sort of indifferent. So yes.
You guys look at any other campaigns or anything like that, also like what they're looking for. Already has entrance to the neighborhood. It is a plastic blocks in the middle of the street. So it's like, I know you had mentioned street width was mitigating factor, but blocking one lane the other thing feels doable. What other plans? What other plans you guys?
Right. So it was more of an engineering data driven. I think that's one of the things you just said. That was what we focused more on. The toolbox does shrink when we're on narrower streets. And the reason is we do not widen pavement and we do not take right away or take people's property as part of the traffic calming program. It's very much taking what's out there today, what's the best that can be done relatively quickly. I stress the phrase relatively quickly to get some traffic calming out there. So that kind of limits the toolbox. Some of the other options, though, would be the radar feedback signs. You may have seen some where there's a speed limit sign, there's a radar, and there's a kind of electronic sign that it tells you what your speed is. And if you're speeding, it'll kind of flash at you. There are some streets that is our recommended design. It's not as effective as cushions. It can still be effective. Some streets that's more appropriate than the cushions, but on Ardee, we feel like the cushions would be just as appropriate, if not more appropriate, to really lower speeds more. Some of the other options that we would have considered, you mentioned chicanes. Chicanes are basically things that you can kind of construct on the side so that instead of a car going straight on a road, they sort of have to turn their steering wheel right or left. You're almost creating sort of that turning movement. Sometimes with on-street parking, when on-street parking is shifting sides of the road, that's a way of doing chicanes. Sometimes we build things though. Again, the lack of the width and not ever widening a road in the program kind of kick the chicanes out.
Section
That's true. Yeah. And again, back to another thing we look at is neighborhood traffic circles. Sometimes we do look at whether those could fit. They're like roundabouts, but much, much smaller, more appropriate for neighborhoods. Another challenge with that is, again, we don't widen the intersections any. And with WeGo buses, they really get difficult in maneuvering them. And we really try to make sure that we're not doing any disservice to school buses. So, I mean, not forget the fact there's a school right there. Is any neighborhood, we try to make sure school buses can go around circles whenever we design them. But with Dan Mills right there, that kind of ruled it out also at some of the intersections, just because some of the left turns on these tight intersections would be kind of difficult. Some of the other examples or some of the options really would just be the speed tables. Again, the kind of longer across the whole road, but we do see the emergency vehicle benefits of doing the cushions. So that was sort of the toolbox, a lot of the options we presented at the first meeting, but Ardee Avenue is sort of it's kind of limited based on the width. And that's kind of common. There's a lot of neighborhood streets that are like Ardee Avenue where the toolbox kind of gets limited. But so that's why the cushions are usually a popular thing, and that's why we're proposing that. Yes. Gotcha. Gotcha. So, I'm gonna back to the speed humps. If you've ever driven over speed humps, they're kind of more oval and they're usually like part of the asphalt. One of the problems with that is you can have a contractor build 5 different speed humps. They're probably gonna all get built a little differently, just because when you're trying to shape asphalt, like what NDOT in many cities have gone to with these like rubberized prefab products that you can like bolt in. So those have been around for, I would say, several years. I don't know the exact time frame, but I feel like past 5 or 10 years at least, I've been aware of them, but I'm not the expert at it. But so, and as far as how permanent they are permanent, and that NDOT is not going to come in 5 years later and just take them away. They are going to be there. They do bolt into the pavement. One of the reasons why that's also a benefit is if there is a resurfacing or repaving, some of the streets that we do these, like they're about to get repaved. I don't know about Ardee, so I don't want to misspeak. But they can get unbolted and stored away during the repaving and then brought right back and bolted down. So that's one of the reasons why it's sort of like once NDOT spends the money on it, it kind of will last, again, unless they're getting torn up, and then NDOT through that hub Nashville should be alerted so they can repair it or replace it.
Question, once these are in, is there ever an opportunity to go back? That maybe one of them
I was making sure they were permanent.
Yes, they would be, yes.
Striping involved or removing the existing center yellow there.
Talking with director. There's
Gotcha.
many of the streets around here.
Okay.
Trying to get that done on streets like this so that what that does.
Absolutely. Yes. So to answer your question first, then I'll touch on what council members mentioned. We are not going to be doing any restriping as part of this traffic calming project. What we let's see. Actually, I'm gonna switch back real quick because I think that'll help. If you can bear with me, please. Okay. Excellent. Thanks. Let's see. Okay. So it's kind of hard to tell, but the example on the left is a wider street. This is actually one that got installed earlier this year. Before the traffic calming program, this is West Crest Drive, kind of in southeast Nashville near Creep Hall. Before the traffic calming program, there were no speed cushions and no pavement markings at all. Those white lines were not there. It was 30 feet wide of pavement. I think Ardee is around, well, that graphic showed around 20 feet or so. Yeah, if NDOT decides they want to start removing double yellow center lines and adding white lines for some other safety benefits, that's a very valid thing. It's not as much of a traffic calming, that's just my opinion, but NDOT may have other opinions. But the traffic calming benefit comes, again, picture on the left, that's about 30 feet of pavement. So imagine living on Ardee Avenue where you all live, but it's 30 feet of pavement with no pavement markings, and maybe some of you all have families or you get walk or jog, and it's just like you, as a driver, you see this wide piece of pavement, and just naturally we're invited to want to drive faster because there's just a lot of forgiveness as we're driving faster. So in addition to the speed cushions, even if the speed cushions on that left photo weren't even there, one thing we'll do for wider streets like that is install those white lines. So for that one, we did do the white lines for the pavement marking or for the traffic calming, because we narrowed it to be about 22 feet of, call it, driving area. And then you end up with 4 feet on either side that is supposed to be not where the cars are supposed to be going. It just helps delineate also when people are walking with families or children or everything. It's not a bikeway, it's not a sidewalk, but it's just sort of an area that's like where I'm supposed to be over here and the cars are supposed to be over there. So for some of the wider streets, we absolutely do that in the traffic calming program. Ardee Avenue is one where it's kind of narrow already. White lines could provide some other safety benefits, but I'm not sure it would provide a speeding benefit since it's already so narrow. But again, if NDOT changes some other changes for other reasons, that could be something that you all consider.
What I've been told in the past is that when you have that double yellow, cars feel like they can't get over and cross the line psychologically, because we've all been taught don't cross a double yellow. And so when there is a ped, the car says, step off the road, I can't leave my lane. So when you remove that double yellow, even on an more narrow street, it's within 30 feet lane. That's why.
Gotcha.
Patient. We're certainly not doing it on big streets in the area.
Gotcha. Can you make sure you're muted?
Right up.
Have a noodle. Seriously.
Also, with white lines end up, if that would happen at Ardee, the white lines end up coming in, because we're not going to get sidewalk. But like, oh my God.
It's just the way, and that's the street that's similar to Ardee. So I would check out McChesney and see what that does. It doesn't really give you much. It doesn't narrow the street by very much at all. It really is on the edge, but it again helps kind of set that air, like psychologically, I'm okay to be taking up part of the street as a pedestrian because you don't have your own individual lane. You're,
Legally, you're supposed to have 3 feet as a pedestrian. I would hope maybe someday. I've seen it in Europe. They pave what looks like bike lanes on each side of the street, which literally makes a 2-lane road look like a 1-lane road. And obviously, the car can pull over. But I think it's the same thing. It's psychological. It narrows the street. Or makes it.
even if it's not pulled in, even if it's just on the end. I mean, there's going to be when you see McChesney, there's this much room. I mean, some people drive. We'll see, but it's probably 6 inches maybe of pavement. And so it's definitely not like I can't walk on 6 inches.
No.
Great questions, you guys. Overall, so it sounds like we had some feedback. I'll let you recap.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to speak for the group. Again, NDOT, we've prepared a design. We're very comfortable with it, comfortable with what the after results will be, which is just average lower vehicle speeds along Ardee Avenue. We were prepared to basically put the design out for the vote, again, to any property owner that has owned residential property along Ardee. So that's our next step. I mean, that again, we're here to listen and to answer questions, but also to see if there's anything we've missed in the design that we hadn't thought of. That's why we like to make sure it's a final design, but we're open to suggestions. But the next step after this would be to put a vote out. We might wait until after the holiday season, just in case people are out of town or it gets lost. So we may wait until after the new year. We don't have to do that, we can certainly get it out. That's usually something we talk about with council member. Some neighborhoods are wanting to wait until after the holiday season. Some neighborhoods are like, let's get this out now. So we're flexible. Basically, I just want to say we don't have to do either one. We've heard from both. So it's really up to the group here and ultimately the council member on like which way we approach it.
Brad doesn't tell me. So I'm gonna say, I wanna get this done as quick. The sooner we get these out, the sooner we can get a solution in place. The number one thing everybody down. So I want my talk about pedals. And if we're not gonna do it, then this gets voted down. Then let's look at Riverwood. Let's look at the other streets that are next on the list, right? Because there are. So, you know, if this is a no, I wanna know that 6 weeks from now, not well. If the holidays are problematic, this is your street. I don't live on Ardee. I don't drive Ardee as often as you guys drive Ardee. Nevertheless, gotta say it because of all the things that I hear. Many people use it. It can make me either. Let's get that decision made. Unless you feel like there's a reason for you guys in the room here. If you feel like there's a reason to wait till after the holidays, let me know.
And I'll just clarify. It's totally y'all's choice. Likely, if we did go ahead and do the vote, you'd probably start seeing them come in your mail early next week. So that's kind of the time frame. We'd probably try to get them out this Friday in the mail. So you'd be seeing them early next week. Whereas if people wanted to wait until after the holidays, they might start going out that first week of January, the 3rd through the 6th. That's kind of the time frame. Very flexible. Just kind of wanted to put some specific time frames for people to consider.
Thing we found out they don't all come at the same time. People got them for like a week and dealing with the post office.
Hmm.
Several questions. Voting, and when will you get those plans online?
By the time you receive the mailer ballots in your mailbox, they will be online, and the QR code and the website on that mailer ballot.
Quicker so we can look at. I can also share, print some of that stuff off, share that with someone.
So I want to make sure, Councilmember, have we shared the final design PDF with you? So you can email us and we can get that to you, or you can have Councilmember get it to you. There are ways we can get it to you sooner. Absolutely.
I can send it to you actually right now if you want, Richard. I can do that. But I'm gonna tell you that you'll have, once it's up, once it's on that website, you'll have 6 weeks to look at it, to print it off, to share it with everybody during that whole voting process. So the second it's out there, you've still got at least, you've got 6 weeks to get that done, what you're looking to get done.
It's approved, how long after approval will it get?
I have good news and bad news. The good news is there's a lot of streets in Nashville that this process is going and successful. The bad news is there's only one contractor that is doing these traffic calmings. And so the vendor ship time and the contractors getting go every day is putting new speed cushions out. So it may be the summertime next year before you see these installed, but that is not for lack of NDOT wanting to get them out. It's just a lack of in the industry, the contractors and also the vendor or the person who makes the cushions getting them shipped here.
August 29th, can we, 7th, you made a statement on there that, by the middle of September, you would have these 67 specific traffic calming. That included enforcement. Yes. What's the status of that?
The pieces of that I've been working on already began to implement. Which we're seeing in the neighborhood, we're seeing speed trailers, we're seeing these programs for September the 28th, I was out of commission for the month. And when I picked back up on that later um, they're short on officers. They're not doing it. Chief Drake and I, they're not. I have gone in. It has worked. You have to be somewhere in the district. Somewhere in District 7 every single week. South Inglewood, that might be North Inglewood. A lot of people after that scenario with little young kids, but the police are here once a week, and that's enforcement. But our police aren't, they're stressed too thin. We have too few officers, we need more officers, provided more money, we've increased here.
Aren't make it easier to become a police officer.
There's that too. Absolutely. They're not doing
I was gonna go with this, but if you go on to the police department's, dashboard, look at their attrition rate. There's a story last week. Short. If you go to the attrition rate, you find that one officer that graduated from the academy this year, but we've already lost 105 through attrition.
Yep.
And as far as the highway patrol, and Gallatin, right? We're talking about neighborhood streets.
More officers that we can have pulling on the car. We were 50 officers short all the time. We had 50 all the time. Down 50 more officers. It's been a problem. It's a job just like a pilot. You have zero margin of error. People just don't want to do that. And we don't have plane crashes everywhere, but we have officers that we have a margin of officers. We have, again, we've got horsepower. And some of those things were needed. I mean, we got horses, right? We want to make sure our cheaper. That's whatever things we can do to help slow cars down like this, that's a great point. And we don't need to because we've got cars going on the street. Having said that, again, his office slow down these cars that are scaring the. My wife is out walking in the dark right now. That's what she's doing. I'm scared. My little fish trying to be.
So again, we can certainly get these votes out. I think one person, I believe Missy is on the WebEx. She, I think, had expressed the desire to maybe consider delaying it till after the holidays. That's just one person. That's just one person, though. We got a lot of people here in the room. I will say some neighborhoods handle this differently. Sometimes we send out these mailer ballots and we just kind of sit around and wait for 6 weeks at NDOT. Sometimes the council member checks in and says, hey, how you doing? Some neighborhoods get organized and they kind of try to make sure people really know about it. So I don't know what kind of neighborhood Ardee Avenue is. Again, you all know your neighborhood better. If there is usually a desire to kind of get the neighborhood going and make sure people know about it, doing that over the holidays maybe an impact. We can get these out. You'll see them next week. But if y'all want to make sure people are aware, you may want to wait till after the holidays. Just a thought. We're not pushing you either way. We can see what the group here thinks. We have one vote for delaying, but I mean, we're indifferent. We can see if the group here, if you have a strong preference either way. Okay. Do it sooner. Okay.
Delay.
Got a delay.
Express an opinion.
And just to make sure, the delay is 2 weeks, you know, so it is a delay, but it's not a 2-month thing. It would be 2 weeks, but
Do one,
we
left to left.
we could, yeah, if we want to, we can get them, we can get them out in the mail the week before. I need to make sure we know how much, who our team's taking the week off. Yeah, but
Target 1 week difference.
that sounds good. I think what y'all can expect is you can expect to see it after the new year, just might be earlier in the week, as opposed to later in the week, if that makes sense. Because
As close to the end of January as possible so that we know. Yeah. Because again, we have 38 in the pipeline for our district. There's more coming, and there's more coming from around the county. And so that takes other priorities. Oftentimes in other neighborhoods are more dangerous than ours, and that takes ours down. I believe McAlpine was the 25th out of the 24 that were awarded. So I think it was McAlpine. I forget, but it was a District 7 street. And it was just it. I want that to get bumped down by other streets in the county. Let's get ours and more than ours. Our fair share is all of them.
now, was McAlpine awarded in the recent one? Okay, it wasn't. Okay, so what I can add is, I believe in the most recent cycle in August, there were 90 additional streets that applied for traffic calming that we're now collecting data. Again, in February, we're going to be doing this again. Again, Ardee, you're in the program. But McAlpine and some other streets, along with 90 plus others, we're going to be going through this process again. So McAlpine was right on the cusp last time. It may get selected because if it was 25th and only the top 24 got chosen, then that should be number 1. Well, there are 90 more, so who knows? It still may be number 1, or it might be 10, or we don't know yet. So
Slow and that's dry. Everything else we're doing.
yeah, and then us trying to keep up with all the great initiatives to really just improve safety.
Literally, when I say I want our fair share,
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So there's actually not a bike lane there, but now in the intersection part, is there any conversation about how we get cars to stop at the stop signs? I've almost been hit, and I do stop. I'm a stop at the stop signs, but still you'll have cars that blow right through even though I'm crossing and I'm already stopped.
Right. I will get.
How that might, I know cushions are mostly for in between the stop signs.
That's right.
Stopping.
That's right. So I'll give you an enforcement answer that we can't control, and an engineering one that we can control. So enforcement, like speeding for people not running stop signs, that's an enforcement issue. I know Councilmember just talked about police and everything. So NDOT, fortunately, we can't make people stop. I wish we could. It's very frustrating. As a traffic engineer, it's very, very frustrating when people will not stop at red lights, when they will not stop at stop signs. As far as what you can do is sometimes the stop signs, I don't know if it's daytime, nighttime, or anytime, but a lot of times the stop signs have like the metal silver pole. What NDOT's trying to do is add like a red strip. It just makes it a little more visible. Some people, unfortunately, are just going to blow through stop signs, and it's very irritating. But I do truly believe some people accidentally, ignorantly don't stop because they just don't see it. So you can do a Hub Nashville 311 request and ask them. I'd have to drive out there, which I might on the way home tonight, to see if they're already out there. I don't know if I have anything better, but for ones that don't, that's a very inexpensive way to improve safety. We could. You could also ask NDOT if they'd be willing to do that. A stop ahead. But I mean, again, I'm thinking nighttime. The stop ahead markings are good, but that stop sign with a invisible pole or a red bright, that's what NDOT's really trying to do to kind of catch people's attention a little better.
As you say, it's that intersection, you've got the possible.
Correct. I, as a traffic engineer, I would love for that to be a roundabout, but it would be a very large capital project, in my opinion, because I don't think that buses could really circulate it is the right way, because of how tight it is. And it certainly would not, the WeGo bus does, but I'm not sure about school buses. I'm not sure about the school buses. You might know better about the school buses, but either way, we wouldn't want to design something that a school bus couldn't do a left turn. So, I would love to see it, but everything we're talking about is like kind of outside the traffic calming program. But in general, I'm a fan of roundabouts instead of all-way stops, but it'd be taking some land, I think. Hmm.
Just have like the standard sort of like school speed limit thing, like when sort of lights, like there might be ways to sort of like call more attention to that intersection, you know, a lot of walkers, since that curve has been changed. So it's like more walkers than the cars that are driving up the roads going past you too. So
Okay.
there's just like there's no crossing guard there. It's just a high visibility intersection at this time.
I didn't answer part of your question like 15 minutes ago. Beautification. So when we can do things like chicanes or the bulb outs or traffic circles where you can plant something, we do get with beautification office during those cases to make sure that if anybody's gonna do a planting, is it gonna be a bad type of planting or a good type of planting? Since we didn't have any of that here, we did not coordinate with beautification. But I just, for some reason, looking at you, I was like, I didn't answer that part. So I wanted.
Under NDOT, by the way.
Mhm.
But it did move, so that is a good thing too, that Diana's got director out of town. I always one thing.
Yes.
I feel the news where they put up these things, the LPRs, license plate readers. Yeah. All right. I think it's a bad mistake when you don't include other things about speeding cars, or you don't put a microphone on to catch the loud cars. That's good feedback. I'll take that back to the council, because I mean, you know, the cops say, well, we can't be everywhere. We're short-handed. We can't be here. We can't be there. We can't be. But if they have like a microphone on them and some kind of program, and they can catch the cars fast down the street and can hear them with a microphone and take a picture of the plates, they can't deny it. That's interesting. We've got some surveillance concerns with that and legality as far as, but I'll definitely take that feedback back to the council office. Thank you for that. But I mean, I'm just sitting here listening, you know, to try to come up with some kind of solution. I appreciate it. You're critical thinking at the point. Thank you. Fred? Good?
Yeah, I think we're here to answer any questions, but yeah, we'll move forward with the design and 1 week or so, we'll put the votes out. So.
Let's touch base tomorrow as far as that goes. And
Excellent. Okay, well, thank you all very much.